So welcome back. This is the second part of my cherry, single cherry and double flowering cherry video. So if you haven't watched the first part, you need to watch that first, because in the first part I show you how to make the stamen centers, how I make the single cherry blossom, which I'm going to be referencing in this one, the buds and the leaves and the calyx. And basically the technique is similar. So we're going to go through that, and then we're going to move on to the coloring of both types of cherry and then also the assembly. So let's get started. So in the previous first part of this video, I showed how to make the stamen centers. So we have the stamen centers like this, and then making them in thread using also fishing filament. And then of course in the first one, we then learned how to make the cherry blossom flower, how to make the 4 different size buds, how to make the leaves, and then finally the calyx. So in this video, we're going to pick up where we finished up. So now your flowers, buds, and leaves are dry. We're going to move on to the coloring. But before we do that, I'm just going to show you the double flowering cherry, how to make a double variety. Now, when we make the double flowering cherry, this is, as I said, ornamental prunus, okay? So this is a double version of, obviously, the single cherry, okay? Now, a lot of flowers, we make in sugar, like lisianthus, and as I said, many flowers have single and double varieties. So this is a single cherry blossom. It's just got 5 single petals. And then this is a double flowering cherry, which is what it's normally called. And when we make the double flowering cherry, there's several options you have here. Of course, the shade of pink you start off with, and then also the color of the stamen. So I'm going to show this one here, which is actually in the first video I showed how to use pale green thread. So this is pale green thread, and then I have American Beauty pink, which I'll be using as a dust on the flower, mixed with some semolina for the thread, all right? You could also dust stamens, pale pink, and then pale green, and then you can put the American Beauty on the tips if you're going to use the stamen method. But I'm showing you here the thread one. Now, when you do the double flowering cherry, you can do both layers in the same color. So these are both being done in pale pink, or you could use, say, for example, a darker pink for the base part, and then a paler pink on top. And then also you can do this with pink and then white. So the outside of this flower is pink and the inside is white. Now, when you actually dust it, it won't look quite as sort of different. But this is also, some varieties have almost like a white inside and then a pale pink on the outside. So you have lots of sort of options there. Now, the technique is the same. So when we make the double flowering cherry, you would make obviously your thread, and then you repeat the flower. So you repeat basically technique that I showed on the first video of making the cherry blossom, okay? And so once you've got it all veined and softened and you've cut the tips, all you do there is you just take your little balling tool, your companion tool, and you're just going to make a little hole in the middle, and that's it, all right, at this stage. Now you want to then pop that into a zip top bag, all right, so because we want to stop this drying, so we're just going to pop that into a zip top bag here just to stop that drying. And then we're going to make the second part of this. Now you can, if you were making, say, let's say 3 of these or 5 of them, you can make all of the first stage because they're not going to dry in the zip top bag. Then you can do the second part. Now for the second part, which is going to be the top part of this, we're going to take a number 6 pale pink or white and press into the flower mold. So it's going to take, this is a regular number 6 size. So we're going to go back to the mold we used in the first part for the here. Okay. And then we're going to also then just take your paste. So this is your number 6 size paste. And just going to press that into your mold. So remember, just do this with your fingers initially. So just going to treat this the same way. Now we don't have to use the, in the first part we used actually the back of the mold. And then we also use the cosmetic sponge with the cross in it, which is this one here. We don't have to do that because of course it's flat. But you can use your cosmetic wedge, or you can use your Dresden tool as well. So you can use your Dresden tool to just help get the paste to the ends here as well. And then you can just going to use that just to stretch that down. And then you can just use your cosmetic wedge. This is quite a thin paste, okay? So the wedge works well for that. Just going to work out. Just also remember, as discussed in the first part of this, on the first part of this video, if you do have an area where it gets thin, you can just take a little tiny ball of paste if you needed to patch that, okay? We're just going to get that, work that like so, okay? And then what we'll do is we'll take your back veiner, Okay, so once you've got that into the mold, I'm going to take the back veiner. Just going to press around. Remember, just press around the outside of this, all right? So you're going to get your vein in. I'm going to just carefully take this out of the mold. All right, but it's quite thin. And then again, we're going to take now our little scissors here. Just going to make like a little tiny slice, okay? So just going to just remove like, so really we're just extending the length of the petals. So if you do it, if you just make a straight cut, it's going to look like a straight cut, but you actually want to just make like a little tiny cut like that. It's just like a little tiny wedge of paste. You could also do this with an X-Acto knife, you know, a scalpel, but I never use those just because they can damage your plastic surface. So I generally use scissors for this type of work. Okay, so I've now thinned and cut in between the petals. So we're going to take your pad. So remember, you can use either technique, all right? So you can either take your Dresden tool, like we did in the first one, and just work around the top half of the petal, just gently, like that. All right, or as I said, the other alternative method, just do one more with this, is to you use one or the other. You wouldn't use both of them on the same flower, but you can also take, remember, your companion tool. With your companion tool, so generally I like to do this in the air. We're just going to work around, just sort of frilling the edge of the petals like this, okay? Just going to work that around your edge. Just almost have it so you see your tool is going to go at an angle like that. I'm going to turn it over onto a cosmetic sponge, and then with your little ball tool here, companion tool, we're just going to just gently cup here and here and here and here and here and here. All right, so that's going to be, and then what you would do is you take your flower out of that's got the Mexican hat part on it, so your back part out of the here. Taking your egg white, you're going to brush egg white just around the center, and then just a little bit, just a tiny bit into the base of each of the petals. So just right at the base of each petal. Now the easiest way to do this is to pick this up with your companion tool, okay? And then what you're going to do here, like we would do a daisy, you just align that so you see how it aligns like so. Okay, so you now have got that. So that is sitting in between the original petals. And then we go back to how we did the single flower. That is to use your ball tool, all right? And then you're going to just make a little mark. Now this little mark, especially on this one, what it does, it gives you the sort of a nice defined base. But also in the case of this double flowering one, it helps to make sure the two parts of the flower stay together. So you see how you almost have this little star shape in the middle, okay? And then what we do is you take your pre-made center, okay? So in this case, as I said, this is the pink thread, a green thread with the pink. I'm going to put a little bit of egg white around here. And then what we do is you're going to just take that down. I'm going to pull that through till that just disappears into the top there like so. Okay, and again, we're just going to now start to just waste your paste on the back there like so. And then just using your scissors, just going to trim that to about, I said, about a centimeter on the back, okay? All right, so that's going to give you the back of your flower. And then what you would normally do with that is you just would hang this upside down, all right? So you just would hang that upside down. You just leave it to dry for, just like when we make daisies and flowers like that, just leave it to dry for about 5 minutes or so. So potentially you could make your next one. And then once it's dried a little bit, you can just sort of just have some of the petals, you just sort of just arrange the petals. So you'll have some of them going up and some, and you can again change the shape of the flower so you can get a little bit of a natural look to this. All right, so see how you're going to get this nice natural look to that. And then you just would continue it drying. And when you've done the double cherry, okay, the calyx will be done the same way as I've shown on the end of the first part. This is done with the little, the larger size of the small calyx. All right, and then when you do and so that would give you the calyx on the back of it. And then the buds would be done in exactly the same way. So, you know, these are the buds. So you're just going to, again, do the buds exactly the same way. Obviously you've got your small, your medium, your large, and your extra large buds. So you just follow your directions. Now I've shown making both of the cherry in the same color pink, but of course, as I said, the prunus especially does come in a very dark pink color as well. So you can do that by putting more pink in the paste, or alternatively you can just use a different color dust, which is what I'm going to do to make these look a little stronger. So in the next part, I'm just going to show you another alternative in using the cherry blossom as single petals. So here I'm just going to talk a little bit about using individual petals. Now, when I use cherry blossoms for example, for a wedding cake, I will often just make some individual cherry blossom petals, and then I would then like sprinkle them on the table, or I would actually just put a few of them on the cake. On the cake, you're going to see a little bit at the end of this particular part. I'm going to show you some cherry blossoms on that, on individual petals, because if you have a cherry tree, or think of cherry, the blossoms drop off little petals drop off very rapidly. So you often every day you're going to have like almost like snow. And so it's a really nice way of just putting a little bit of sort of looking like some petals have fallen off the cherry branch. So what you do there is you're just going to use the number 6, fill your mold up, all right, here like this. You really don't even need to worry about veining the back of this, because you're really not going to see it, because you just would normally attach them or sprinkle them with that part up. And then you're just going to take this out. You don't have to make the cuts in between the petals, okay? And then all you're going to do then is you're going to just soften around your edge, okay? Now you can soften with a balling tool, just like a small balling tool here, but just if you're going to do that, you put on very, very little pressure, because you want it to be, as I really not too frilly, all right? But I generally prefer to use the 2 techniques I've shown you previously, which is your Dresden tool or your companion tool, okay? So just going to work that, because a lot of flowers we would use a balling tool on. Now then all you do is turn this over. You will still cup the petals with your companion tool. And of course this is going to yield 5 individual petals here, like this. So you're just going to yield, so you're just going to cup them like so. Okay, and then you can use a knife, you can use a little cutting wheel, and all you're going to do then is you're going to just cut into the petals like this. And you see how, so this is going to give you just like individual little cherry blossom petals. And of course you could make, say 15, 20 of these. And you're just going to let these dry. And then when we actually dust the flowers, you will also put a little bit of pink and green on these. And I said, literally, you can just have them in a little container. You can just sprinkle some on, say, the tablecloth where the cake is, whether it's a wedding cake, an anniversary cake, baby shower, christening cake, or you can actually attach a few of them to the cake surface with a little bit of piping gel. And so next part of this is going to be showing you how we bring these to life with color. So the shade of pink you choose to obviously dust your flowers is totally up to you. I'm going to show you 2 different colors, a lighter and a darker one, but you can also even go a lot paler than this. And remember, when you're using dust, if you add corn flour or cornstarch to them, you can lighten the colors to make them a lot less intense. Now I'm going to use this color, which is called Cosmos. So this is just sort of a pale pink color I like to use on cherry, sweet peas, flowers like that. And what I'm going to do there is going to take some of the pink. Just going to put this onto a napkin here. Remember, never take the color straight from the pot. Now we're going to show you first of all the flower. Now on the flower I'm going to use a small flat brush, all right? So this is a flat type of brush. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to brush around the edge. So you see how I'm getting this slightly stronger pink on the edge of the flower. So just don't load too much color onto your brush. So you're going to use the brush, so you're just brushing from the source away from the source, so that means towards you. And then we're going to do a little bit around here. You'll do the same on the back as well. So you're just going to go around the back of the petals. And typically when I'm doing a lot of flowers, like if I was doing a wedding cake with, say, 30 cherry blossoms on, I would do all the base color first. And then once you've done all the base color, go on to the green and then the color on the bottom of the calyx. Okay, and then I'm going to use this brush, and I'm going to use it now a little bit like a knife blade, and I'm just going to come into where the little indentation is there on the heart. So just get a slightly stronger color just right at that little point there, like so. Okay, so that would be your pink. So you do your pink on your cherry blossom flowers, and then you do your pink on your buds. Now I'm going to use, for the buds, I'm going to just use a different brush because I want to use just a softer brush. So this is a round brush here. And when we do the green one, we're going to put little pink on the tip of that. So you're just going to brush from the middle coming down, get a little bit of pink on the tip. And then when you do the buds here, again, you're just going to just brush this just gently. You're going to come about halfway down with the round brush. So you see how your pink will come about halfway down on your bud, okay? So as I said, flat brush, because a flat brush will give you more of an intense color on the edge. A round brush will give more of a softer color, okay? And then we're going to move on to the second color, which is going to actually, I'm going to use a mixture. This is a 1-to-1 ratio of light apple and prairie green. So I just keep this mixed because I use this on a lot of different projects. So what that would mean, you just would take equal amounts of a light apple green and a prairie green. And you can see this one is just like almost a very, very pale limey green color. And then prairie. And again, if you don't have these exact colors, you can just sort of mix colors or just obviously use what you have. But remember, if you have a darker green only, you can make it less intense by adding some cornflour or cornstarch to it. All right, so we're going to take now, so as I said, so you can mix that up on the napkin, or as I said, I have this pre-mixed, so because I use this on a lot of my projects. So it's going to take a little bit of the green here. And then what we're going to do is then you go through with your green. Now the green is going to be used at the bottom of the flower above the calyx. So you're just going to go in there with a small brush here. So it's going to put just a little bit of green just at the very base of the flower. Okay. And then also at the top of the calyx. So you're just going to brush that. So you see from the calyx here, I'm just brushing it from the tip of the calyx. So the top part of the calyx will be this slightly brighter green color. Okay. And then you would do the same on the buds. All right, so you see how you're just going to go in there. And it's beneficial to have your calyx dry, all right? So as I said, just sort of make sure they dry. Again, you can pop these in a food dehydrator. And you're just going to just put these, so you're just going to have your little calyx will go around there. So you're going to get this soft green. So almost you have the darker pink, and then that middle area is almost like the natural color of the pink, you see? And then again, you're just going to put a little bit of that darker green on your calyx, okay? And then you will do the same here. So just a little bit of the green, and then again, this is just a little tiny, tiny bud. They're really cute to use. Just going to put that darker green on the, as I said, the bud, the calyx there, tip of the calyx on the outside part, okay? Now also, if you were doing the little, individual cherry blossoms, petals I spoke about, so usually I just dry them in a convoluted foam like I showed in the leaf. So they just have a little bit of shape. And then all you then would do there is you just would take your, again, usually just with you can use a round or a flat brush here. Just going to go around your edge of your petals, okay? But as I said, you can use a round or a flat. So sometimes I'm very specific about brushes, but like here you could use either. And this will just give you the little bit of pink. So this, whatever your color you can put on your cherry, this would be what you would use for your little petals, okay? And again, we'll take a little bit of that green, just going to put just a little touch of green. And I don't usually put the color on the back of these, all right? I just leave the back of them the plain, because if you're going to stick this on a cake surface and you've got dust on there, sometimes when you pick them up, you're going to get the color on your fingers. But this is also really pretty to use. If you were doing, let's say, like a spring wedding cake, and you were doing like chocolates or petit fours or cake pops, or for any sort of like little small confection, you could put one of these on top of a little chocolate. You could put it on cookies. Just a really, really nice balance of the cherry blossoms on the wedding cake. But as I said, I often would just make these up and then dust them to match the cherry. And then when I set up the wedding cake, which I've done several times with cherry on, I would just sprinkle these like almost like confetti on the table. And obviously make sure that the dusting part is up, all right? But you just almost like pick them up and pop them on. But it's really, really pretty, and also to add on to the cake that you'll see a little later, okay? So that's the coloring on the single cherry. And so just gonna pop those to one side. So that will be the coloring on the single cherry for the green. And then we're going to the last color we're going to put on there. It's going to be this color here, which is called Ondina Rose. So this is almost like a mauvey color, all right? On the double flowering cherry, I'm going to use a plum, all right? And you can see the plum is, but if you actually took plum and added quite a lot of cornflour or cornstarch to it, it would take it down to that sort of almost like mauvey sort of color. But this is a color called Ondina Rose. And Ondina Rose is a variety of rose. And what we actually do here, you're just going to brush that on the base of the calyx. So you see, then you're just going to bring that up from the bottom coming up. So you see how your calyx will have this, almost this sort of pale mauve sort of color onto it. So really, really pretty color. Because usually most calyxes on cherry have this sort of plummy, pinky color on the bottom of the calyx, all right? And then here on the flower as well, you're going to just take your, going to put a little bit of color onto the flower, okay? And that's going to give you the coloring onto the flower. Now, once you've got that completed, then you will take your, you're going to steam those, all right? So this is a little closed steamer. So it's going to steam these, and the steaming, what that's going to do is going to set the color. I've already got, and of course you've got 4 different sizes of blossoms here. So we're just going to just lightly steam. So you're just going to hold that twirl in the steam of the steamer. And when you do the buds, you can do a couple of buds at a time. But just going to just steam them well, all right, just for a few seconds. So that's just going to ensure that they have a nice look. And as I said, this is going to get rid of that sort of dry look to them, but it's really going to enhance the color. Okay. And that will give you your color of your cherry, all right? So you can see how I've got the cherry here. So you have this beautiful color on the cherry. And as I said, you can see the sort of the lovely shading onto there, all right? So that's how I would do, or recommend you do the single cherry. But as I said, of course, the colors could vary a little bit. Now on the double flowering cherry, all right, so on the double flowering cherry, I'm going to use exactly the same sort of concept, but I'm going to use American Beauty. Now this is the color I used in the pollen. So when I made the pollen to go on the green and pink stamens, I used this American Beauty. So this is a sort of a stronger color, okay? So here, you're just going to take some of this, and then again, you'll use exactly the same concept here. But you see how this is going to give you a stronger contrast color. So you go around the edge of those, and then you're going to put just a little bit of pink down there, a little bit of pink, so it's going to go around your petals there. And then if you do get a little bit too much dust on, you can just sort of brush that off, all right? But you're going to get this darker color on your edge. And then what I'm going to do there is going to do that on your edge, and again, just cut in with your, just on that like tip part there. So it just sort of shows you just a slightly stronger contrast. And on this one here, I'm going to use prairie green, which is, this is just a regular prairie green here. And then I'm also, because this is a little bit stronger, I'm going to take the brush and I'm going to just brush like at the base of each petal. I'm just going to brush just like a little line. So you almost get this like green star. You see how in the middle there, you're going to get this almost this like green star. So you're just going to brush down the middle of each of the petals. Again, we're going to just put some green, some prairie green on the base of this. And then again, I'm going to put the prairie green just on the tip of the calyx. And then I'm going to use this color here, which is going to be plum. Okay, so I'm going to use a plum color, and I will use just a little bit of plum just at the bottom of the calyx here, like that. So you're going to get this sort of just slightly darker color. And then again, that would be steam. Now your buds would be done in exactly the same way, just using a round brush, and then you've got your prairie green, and then we're just going to just give that a little steam here, like so. Now remember, if you don't have a closed steamer, you can use a saucepan of water, and then the best thing to do is to just put some foil over the top of the water, make some little holes with like a bamboo skewer. And then when in water steams, you're going to get a very gentle steam. Just be careful if you're using a tea kettle. So first of all, electric tea kettles typically have an auto shut off, but you can keep your finger on there. But a tea kettle is much more severe steam. So, but hold your flowers a little bit further away if you are using a tea kettle. All right, so that's our coloring done on our flowers, and talked about the double flowering cherry. So when I come back, I'm going to show you how we color and finish the leaves. Now we're going to tape the base of the leaves, all right? So you're just going to when you start the floral tape, start off just a couple of centimeters, about ½ inch or so down. Just going to go around with your floral tape. You slide it up to the bottom, so you're going to get a nice start. And you're going to come down about 25 millimeters, about 1 inch, okay? So you can do that on all of your leaves. Okay. And then we're going to dust the leaves. Now, when we dust these, we're going to use here an apple green. So this is a little bit of a stronger color. Okay, so we're going to use an apple green. And when I put this color on, what I'm going to do there is it's just going to show you one leaf. You're going to just brush from the outside to the inside, all right? This is sort of a roundish and flat brush in one. So, because what I want to do here is I want to just brush quite gently around the edge of the leaf and then just gently brush in towards the middle. So I want the sort of center to be a little bit lighter and slightly stronger around the edge, you see? And so then you're going to go around. And you can almost like do this as you go, you know, so you brush the edge, you brush from the outside to the inside. So you're going to get this just like a little bit slightly stronger on the edge and this lighter in the middle here. You're going to do the same on your back of your leaf. Because also remember, when the leaves appear on the cherry or on the fruit tree, they're going to be young leaves. So they're quite vibrant, all right? So, but as I said, you just want to have this, so you get this little tiny bit stronger on the edge there, like so, okay? And you can just add a little tiny bit of a green accent down the middle. So you also get this nice sort of shading on the leaf, okay? And then we're going to take whatever color you've used on your flower, you're going to use that color on your leaf. So if I was doing leaves, these are for the single cherry. So I've used the Cosmos color. And then we're going to just use a little accent. So it's going to just brush a little bit of pink just down the base of the leaf, both front and back, all right? And usually I do this as a way of balancing. If you watch my like Flower Pro videos on roses, when I make rose leaves, whatever color I've used on the rose, I use that on the leaves, okay? And of course, if I was doing these leaves to go with the double flowering cherry, I would use the American Beauty pink. Now, once you've got the leaf completed, you're then going to steam the leaves. So those would just be steamed. That's just going to set the color. And so we're just going to just gently steam this. Okay, so it's going to give you your coloring on your leaves, all right? So you're going to and then just stand those up to dry, okay? So, and you can just, and then you can spray these. So when you spray with spray lacquer, you can do this obviously in a box or outside. Just remember, make sure it's a protected surface. So we're just going to just gently spray this over. Just a light spraying of the spray lacquer onto the leaf, okay? And then these will dry, ready to go into the arrangement. You can also use a brush on glaze as well. And of course, with air drying clay, you can use like products like Sculpey have it's like a paintable glaze you can use on leaves. So you can, of course, on air drying clay, you can use craft type of obviously glazes. So those are our components. So we've now got our leaves completed. So we've got our leaves completed. We have the flowers, the buds. So these are all ready now to go into a spray. So in the next part, I'm going to show you how I would put these together in a natural branch. Now, when you use cherry, there are, of course, many ways to use this. You could use this with other flowers, like, for example, with roses and things like that. I'm going to show you with the cherry how to create more of a natural branch, looking like if you went into your garden or a park and you cut a piece off a cherry branch, it sort of looks just much more natural. And typically that's the way I like to see cherry used on a cake, although you can, as I said, totally mix this with other flowers. So think of this almost like a very pretty filler flower. So as I said, so coming up next, I'm going to show you how to do the wiring. So we now have created our, obviously, flowers, our buds, and our foliage, our leaves. So now we're going to put them together. Now, when I do cherry, what I do is I create like little florets. So think a little bit like broccoli or cauliflower. You have when you dismantle it, you have the little florets. So you're going to do like almost like little posies of the flowers. So I've obviously separated what I have. Now, what I did is I've used 2 of each size bud. So I have a total of 8 buds, 2 small and 3 large leaves. And then I have 5 flowers, 2 closed up and 3 open. So on the very end of the branch, I'm just going to use a small and a medium bud, okay? And then I have here a small, a medium, and a large bud, a closed flower, an open flower, and then 2 small leaves. And then the remaining components I have there, which is going to be 3 flowers, 2 open, 1 closed, 3 leaves and then a large and 2 extra large buds. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put these together, first of all, in little groupings. So when we do the cherry buds, now you don't want to obviously break the calyx, so what you want to do is just use your whatever color tape you've used for your main assembly, for your main stems. So we're just going to just tape the 2 smallest buds. These are going to go right on the end of the branch. Okay, so those are going to go together like that. And then we're going to think of almost like a little posy. So what we're going to do here is going to just take these and where they naturally meet, right? Because if you think about a cherry, if this was a real cherry tree with a flower, obviously fruit on it, when you think of the stalk of the cherry, you know, so you're going to sort of almost like see where they naturally meet. And then you can just put these into position here. And then I'm just going to start taping them, so just where they naturally meet. So they're all sort of pretty much at the same level. And then we'll be moving things around once we get them in the spray, because we'll be moving things around to obviously get a balance here. But just going to just put these together like this. And then you're going to take the leaves, and those are going to go into the spray there. So I'm going to come down about 5 millimeters, all right, on the end of the leaf here. So you can see I'm going to come down about 5 millimeters. Just going to place that into position. I'm going to do the same on the one here, like so. So we'll have the here, all right. Okay, you're just going to just sort of open these up. So this will be our small cluster of the cherry and the leaves, okay. And then my last cluster there is going to be done with, again, so you can just start off with like a bud and a closed, but just almost just put them in. And then we can add another bud here. So see, they all just want to where they just naturally meet, okay. So you can just do 2 or 3 of your components, and then you can put those together. And then you're just going to go around, and then you're going to add in your, but so don't worry too much about where they're positioned, because we can move things quite easily once this is all together. And again, we're just going to take your leaves here, just going to add the leaves in. And as I explained in obviously the first part of this video, you know, not all cherry, when you see cherry in the very early spring, there are no leaves. They're just going to be the buds and flowers. And then towards the sort of about halfway towards the end of the flowering cycle, then that's when the leaves obviously come. And so for example, like here across from my school, we have a lot of ornamental pears called Bradford pear, which is a beautiful white blossom on the Bradford pear. And but you know, one day they're going to be looking like this, almost like covered with this big snowball. It's just completely white. And then as soon as the flowers start to die off, then suddenly like a week later, the tree is going to be green because all the leaves come. But so that's really up to you. But I like to use actually the balance of the leaves for a natural spray. Now, if you checked on the internet and you put on cherry blossoms on cakes, you'll see a lot of people do like a branch going up the side of the cake with, as I said, just the cherry blossoms and buds. And so no leaves on that. And that's really, as I said, totally up to you or to the client what sort of look you're going for. But I'm trying to here emulate almost like how it would look if you cut a piece of cherry blossom branch off. So you can see how we've got now our 3 little groupings. Now, when we do this, all right, so once we've got this together, I'm just going to retape, all right, so I'm just going to retape at the bottom. I'm going to come down just a little way, and then I'm going to go back up and break off. So actually you have almost like three layers of floral tape there. And then when we texture, and some of you have seen this before on my videos, like when I do my oak and things like that, because this is a tree. Now, cherry doesn't have a real strong texture, but you're going to just take a pair of scissors, and you can just use some scissors. And what you're going to do here is you're going to cut into the floral tape. So you actually sort of emulate the natural bark you would have on the tree, okay? So just get them together, and then we're just going to just tape. So you just start at that bottom part, you're going to come down. You don't come down too far because you're only going to see a little bit of this. You're going to come back up to the top. Just going to break that off. And again, you're just going to just texture this with your scissors. Now you can also use, for example, you can use like wire cutters, but just very gently. Just sort of something fairly sharp, all right? And that gives that nice sort of texture. And again, you're going to just do that on the end here as well. So just going to start, going to come down, you're going to come up here. But I'm only coming down, as you can see, this is only about 2.5, 25 millimeters, about 1 inch, okay? So then you're going to come back up to the top there, going to break that off. And then again, we're just going to use this. If you are using the wire cutters, just do that very gently because you don't want to obviously decapitate your cherry blossom buds, all right? So that is going to be the first part. So we've got our little florets together, and you can see there from the back there, you can sort of see how they go together, okay? So I'm just going to pop those two in the front. And then we're going to take some wires. Now, we're going to use 22 gauge wires, okay? So we're going to use 22 gauge wires. Now, when you buy a wire, and you can use the size guide or you can use a ruler, but when you buy the wires, all right, the wires are actually 36 centimeters or 14 inches long. And you can use white or green, doesn't matter. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to cut there. So we're going to do 10 inches, all right? So 10 inches there, all right, which is obviously your 10 inches there is going to be your, as I said, 25 centimeters, okay? So you're going to cut that. And so what we're going to do there is we're going to cut off, as I said, a 25 centimeter piece, all right? So just going to take your, there we go. So it's about 25 centimeters or 10 inches. All right, so you're going to cut that off, and that means you will have a 4-inch or about 10 centimeter piece left. All right, so you have, as I said, so these are 3 wires here, 25 centimeters, and then the end of the extra of the wire will be used for the extension to make the main branch thicker. Now, what we're going to do is going to take your 3 wires, okay? So you're going to take your 3 wires, and what we're going to do here is we're going to just sort of add so just literally about 1 centimeter, right? So a little bit less than 1/2 inch from the end there. You can place the 3 wires at the end there. So they're a little bit onto that part we textured, all right? Make sure they're all level. And then you're going to start with your floral tape. All right, so you're going to start with your floral tape here. You're going to just squash this on. Okay, and then what we're going to do is going to come down 2 inches from the end there, about 5 centimeters. All right, so what we're going to do then, we're just going to start from the end here, okay, and you're just going to come down with your floral tape about 2 inches, 5 centimeters. All right, so that's from the end of the wire there, so you're going to come down. All right, so I'm at that 5 centimeters, and then what we're going to do, we're going to go up. So like we did on the components here, going to go up, and then you're going to come down. So we're going to go 5 times. So 3, and then we're going to go up 4. And the area at the top there where you've added the little pieces, just go around a couple of extra times so you just get that nice sort of natural end there, okay? And then you're going to come down to make the 5th one, okay? So what we have here is, you see how you've created this like branch. Now, so the thing with this is that you want to make it look natural, so you can also go around a few extra times as needed. And then I'm going to texture this. All right, so I'm just going to texture this like so. Just give a little bit of texture there. This is good with wire cutters or a pair of like kitchen scissors, or these are just like school scissors, something that you can sort of cut in quite, you know, like little tiny, and obviously do not use your like good quality like needlework scissors, because, you know, these are good for cutting ribbons and paste and things, but just sort of general scissors there, okay? And then we're just going to bring this up and just going to bring up your little blossoms here, okay? So then at this point here, what I'm going to do now is going to just take my, again, about a centimeter, about 10 millimeters down the wire, okay? So about 3/8 of an inch. I'm just going to take those, going to bend those up. I'm just going to put in my cherry, my next one, okay? And you can bend this part away of it, and then you're going to go around like this, okay? And then what you can actually do is you can take your floral tapes. You see what I'm doing is I'm bringing the floral tape over the top here as well. So what this does, it means where you actually fuse, you see where you fuse the two components together, you don't get this sort of severe shape. You're almost going around, so you can do that, you know, 2 or 3 times. Just going to come around here like so, okay? And then we can, of course, we'll be able to open this up. And then you're going to come down. Now again, we're going to come down here So we're going to come down about 4 centimeters, about 1.5 inches. Okay, so going to come down here about 4 centimeters. Okay, so we're going to come down about 4 centimeters. So we're about 5 centimeters, about 2 inch, 4 centimeters, 1.5 inches. And then again, we're going to go up. And then we're going to come down 3, up 4, and then down 5. Okay, so doing 5 times each time there. They will rattle around a little bit. You know, if you're concerned about your paste, remember as I said, I'm using here the sugaring paste, which is quite, you know, is quite a strong paste. But if you're using just regular, like I said, Renshaw brand flower modeling paste, or you're using sort of homemade paste that's a little bit more fragile, just sort of bend them away a little bit. Okay, and then again, we're going to then just going to texture. And the part where your 2 pieces connected, you can just use your Dresden tool or a veining tool, and just almost just sort of like, you see how I'm just pushing those in. But so when you have your branch, then it's going to look nice and natural. Okay. But this is the technique we use for a lot of different flowers. Now then what we're going to do is your last cluster is going to go in. All right, so the last cluster will go in, and I'm just going to go to the opposite side here. So again, about 1 centimeter or so. Just going to put this in here. And at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to take the 3 remaining wires, all right, because what this means now we have 6 wires, so it's actually going to create a slightly thicker part here, because naturally as the branch goes down, you're going to take your wires here. And again, we're just going to go around just a couple of times to secure that. And then we're just going to see how I'm bringing the tape over the top there. Going to go around over the top. Just 2 or 3 times. So just what that helps to do is sort of integrates where the components are going to meet each other. Okay, I'm just going to do one more time. Just be careful the floral tape doesn't get in the way. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, now I'm going to show you how to make a natural branch you could just lay on top of a cake. We'll also talk about securing this on a cake as well. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come down to where the shorter wires are and finish there. So we're just going to come down to where those shorter wires are there. And they're going to come back up. So this is going to be 2. And then we're going to come back down again and just go around a few extra times where the sort of the thickness is. So you almost like just fill that in. You see, I can just fill that in with floral tape, and then down again. This is going to be 3. And then up again is going to be 4. This is all done with half-width tape, okay, in the brown or the twig. And then you're going to come down here. This would be 5, okay? Okay, and then again, we're going to now texture this. So just using your, just going to texture this to make this look like a natural branch. Again, we're just going to take your veining tool, sort of wear the tape. So just use your floral tape there. You can also just sort of like rub the tape, you know, so that will help to smooth it out. Also, when you're doing this on stems and things, it will give like a little bit of a shine to it. But see how you're going to get the natural look of the bark, okay? So the natural look of the bark. Now, so then what we're going to do is just going to carefully open out the cherry. Okay, and the cherry blossom buds sort of curve a little bit, so you don't want it to look like they've had electric shock treatment. So you can just sort of open out your cherry, so you can just sort of gently bend just be careful of the calyx there. And I generally prefer to do this with my fingers because you get a more natural. If you use like a pair of tweezers, you're going to get like this almost this crook from the tweezers from the pliers here, like so. All right. But so see here you have your sort of your natural branch of cherry. Now, So when you use this, as I said, there are several ways to use this, you know, like for example, so you could take this and then you could, of course, tape down here using a straw. You could put that into a cake, you know, so you could have it like trailing down, say from the top of the cake coming down or up the side of a cake. And of course, you can make a bigger version of this. And I'm going to show you also how to do a really long branch in a moment as well. But what you would then do is you decide on sort of how long you want this to be. Now, if you're doing this as a natural branch, all right, so if you wanted to say, for example, look like it's just a piece of cherry, just like laying on a cake like this, you're going to decide sort of how long you want this to be, all right? And so at that point there, so I'm going to make it, so if I was having this just laying onto a cake, all right? You can have it laying down like this. And then I'm also going to talk about like making a little indentation in your fondant and your sugar paste as well. But so you just decide on how long you want the branch to be. And then what we do is you take your wire cutters and we're going to cut this at an angle. All right, so we're actually going to cut this at an angle. Like if you were pruning shrubs, you always cut at an angle, okay? But so what you do there is you cut this at an angle. You need to use your wire cutters like that. So you see how you've actually cut the end of this, all right? And I'm just going to get set up to show you because we're going to fill this in on the end there and dust around there, and that's going to sort of emulate the cut branch, okay? So as I said, I'll be right back to show you the next step. So now we're going to finish off the branch. So I'm going to take a number 3 small ball of paste. This is just some white paste, some flour paste. And what we're going to do here, we're going to just condition that a little bit. And I'm going to use a little bit of piping gel because this is a little bit rough with the wire, so we need something that's a little bit thicker. So I'm going to take some piping gel. I have this in a needle tip applicator. All right, you can also use like a little corn syrup, just put a little touch of that onto there. And then literally you're just going to take that paste and just sort of push it onto the end of here. I'm just going to mold it around and just trim off your excess. All right, so just pull away your excess paste here like so. And you can use your companion tool just to obviously almost just pull that off, because you just want that on that sort of end piece, because this would look like when you cut a cherry tree, how you have the center. And then I'm going to take a napkin. So with a napkin, I'm going to dust just a little bit of cream color on here. So this is like a cappuccino color, so just a cream color. So I'm just going to dust a little bit of that into because obviously the branch, when you cut the branch, is going to be a sort of creamy color. And then we're going to take a little bit of chocolate brown. And then with the chocolate brown, I'm going to just brush that around the edge of it. So you're just going to get that sort of chocolate brown around the edge with the creamy color on the branch, you see? So that looks literally, as I said, if you went and took a pair of like a secateurs, garden shears, and you cut off a cherry blossom branch, that would be sort of how it would look. Now, what we're then going to do is going to take some of the brown. Okay, so I'm going to take some of the brown, just using like a slightly bigger brush here. And I'm going to then just going to brush this onto the branch. So this is just going to give us a little bit of, as I said, some nice color onto there. So you're just going to it will just bring up some details onto the branch there like that. Okay, and then when you are, once you've done that, the best thing to do is to take a pair of pliers. Okay, so just almost like hold that with a pair of pliers like at an intersection here. And then what we're going to do is going to steam it. And what the steam is going to do is the steam will set the powder so it doesn't come off when you handle it. All right, so it's going to just take the all right, so just going to re-steam the branch here. So you want to just steam the end part there. And just as I said, just steam that so that all of the floral tape that we've just covered with a little bit of brown will be, as I said, will be steamed, okay? And then you can just lay that down carefully. Now you can, usually I would let this dry, okay? So just let this dry a little bit. I'm just going to show you this in a finishing stage off straight away. But what you would then do is you would you'd let it dry. Okay, you can do this while it's wet, but it's easier when it's dry because you can pick it up and handle it. So then you can, this is actually in here. This is wafer paper, And what I did there is I took some white wafer paper and I put it in my coffee grinder, which is just like a mini food processor, with some green dust, some moss green dust. So what I've done there is this will actually look like moss. Now, in projects like, for example, on my poppy, I used green semolina, all right? So I used semolina, added green to it to make it more textured. So you get that more like almost like a sort of a fuzzy effect you get on poppies. But here I use this technique to make the effect of moss. And so what you do there is you can take, because when you pick branches, they're going to have like a little moss on them. So you can take like a little bit of the piping gel. You can just sort of just put just like a little piping gel, not too much, all right, just a little tiny bit. And then you can sprinkle it with the, so I've just got this in a little shaker, but you can also just use your fingers and you can do like a little pinch of it. All right, and I'm just going to do just like a little bit just on the, here like that, but you don't need much, okay? But so this is just showing you some different like techniques to give like a sort of a moss effect on the branch, okay? So that's just wafer paper, just a little bit of wafer paper, put in a coffee grinder, which you know, grind your coffee beans in, and you're just going to get a little bit of that and just wash it out, and you can use that because it's if you use the semolina, it's going to be too textured, okay? And so that's really like the basis of how you would do the branch. Now, when you have done that, once it's dry, okay, this could be put onto a cake. Now, I've just covered just like the top of a little cake dummy to represent the cake. So what you would do there is when you've got your, once you've got your branch finished, all right, and you've got your cake covered, then what you would generally do is then you would just take your branch and you just press the, like the little rounded part here, just press that into the fondant. And what that's going to do into the sugar paste or fondant. So you're almost going to make like a little channel for that, but you generally would let that dry, okay? So if, let's say, I mean, of course, this would need to go on a bigger cake, but if you were just putting this on to a cake like that, you just would literally just press that in just gently. So you see what it's done is made like just a little indentation, okay? And then you can take your, so usually what I do is just use my Dresden tool, and I'm just almost gonna just sort of make that a little bit deeper like this, you see? Okay. So you make that a little bit deeper like that. And then of course, when you come to put your branch on, what I would normally then do is I would take a little bit of whatever color you've covered your cake with, whether it's pale green, pale pink, gray, whatever, take a little tiny bit of that leftover sugar paste or rolled fondant, just soften it on the table with a little bit of water. So you're making like a softened fondant, and you then would put just a little tiny bit of that in the bottom of that area there. And what that's going to do is when you then take your branch and you put it on there, it will almost just like look like a very natural spray, okay? So it will actually hold that up, but what it will actually do is once it's on there, it will actually sort of sit on there. Obviously this green is coming off because it hasn't dried yet, all right? But so you just would put this on, and so that would hold your branch, okay? And then your customer could literally just remove that from the cake and take that off. Now, another alternative would be to use a wire in it. So what you can also do is you could put a little wire over the top of the branch, and then you could have like a little tiny, like a cocktail straw going into your cake. But generally that's the way I would do it. So that also means if you were delivering the wedding cake or the celebration cake, you could just take the flowers separately and just take a little container of softened paste and put that in. You can also, of course, use other things like a little piping gel would hold it. Also Super Bonds, which is a product that I use that put a little tiny bit of Super Bond, and it just would stop it, because as you can see, the branch is like, you know, because obviously it might go one way or the other way, but if you want it like sitting up in the cake like that, that is the way you would use it, okay? So we would let that dry. When I come back, I'm going to show you how to do a longer sort of branch. So if you wanted to do like cherry growing up the side of the cake, I'm going to show you how you would create that longer branch as I said, to finish off this segment. So I'm now going to show you how to do a longer branch of cherry. I'm going to be using the double flowering cherry. But gray, this cake is covered with gray rolled fondant or sugar paste. So this is a 15 centimeter by 15 centimeter cake, the base tier. And in the top tier is 10 centimeters by 7.5, that's 4 by 3. So quite a small cake, but obviously for a small wedding. And of course, if you're doing this on a larger scale, you don't necessarily have to have this going all the way up to the top of the cake. If you're doing a 3 or 4 tier cake, you need a lot of flowers. But anyway, so what we do is you take a piece of wire, wire. So this is a 22 gauge wire. You could also use a piece of string, but wire is usually good. And what I've done here is I've just bent the wire, but you can see how beautiful, like this is our previous spray we made of cherry. So you see how beautiful that looks. So of course this would look lovely just as a sort of a smaller spray of cherry. This is a single flowering cherry. And we're going to use in this spray, we're going to use the double flowering cherry. So this is really stunning. And we're going to have a whole spray of this coming up the side of the cake. Now I'm using here a 22 gauge wire, and the 22 gauge wire is stable enough to hold its shape, all right? So all you need to do is you're just going to sort of like measure from where you want the spray to start to where you want the spray to finish, all right? Now, so this actually, this cake I designed for this size, all right? So this is actually just a 36 centimeter, just a full length wire, okay? Now, if you were doing a bigger cake, what you could do there is you could just tape like 2 wires together. You could do the same thing, just decide where you want your spray to be. So it would come up to the top, you know, so if you wanted it a bit longer, and then you just would crank the wire, so then you know that that is the size that you need your piece of your spray to be, okay? So you just measure, but you could also do that with a ruler or a piece of string, and you then will establish it. Now, once we've got our wire, so we know this is the length of our wire, we have to think about where we're going to attach it to the cake. Now, when we attach this to the cake, we're going to use almost like little short wires, which are going to go into straws. And I'm going to do these in 3 places because of the curve of the cake. So I'm actually going to start it here, and I'm going to come up to here, all right? So what you do is you can hold your wire there, and then when you hold it there, you can just sort of use a toothpick and just mark and mark and mark. So my spray will actually be attached like here, and it will come up here, and it will come up here, you see? And when you, once you've got the marks on there, you can use pins or toothpicks. You see, I've got one here right in the front at the bottom. I have one here, okay, where the toothpick is there, all right? And then I've got another one at the top here. So my spray will come up there. Because the spray, of course, is going to be thicker. It's going to be created with 12 24 gauge wires. So it's going to be quite a lot thicker. So we need to make sure we have a sort of way of connecting it to the cake. Now, the way I do that is I take a bamboo skewer. Okay, I'm using a bamboo skewer here. And what I would do is you'd actually push that into the cake. So you go into the cake, I've gone in about 3 centimeters, all right? So just over an inch. And just gonna go into your cake, and you wanna go in at an angle. When you're attaching, because if you put it in straight, what would happen is it could come out very easily. If it goes in at an angle, once the wire's in there, it's going to be a lot more stable. Now you would take a thin straw. These are, for example, a cake pop straw. This is just a fine, like a cocktail straw, drinking straw. This is a cocktail straw, coffee stirrer. Again, cocktail straw, coffee stirrer, small pop. This is more of a thick plastic. It's for cake pops, but these are just like regular sort of like straws, okay? And you can find those online very easily. A lot of, here in the United States, like a lot of grocery stores carry the cocktail straws like this, all right? But anyway, these work really well because we don't need a sort of too big a dowel in there. Because we never stick wires directly into the cake. And then once you take that out, you're just going to insert your piece into there like so. So you're going to have this little hole, all right, which has got the piece of straw in. And that will be ready for a little later on, all right? So we're going to build the actual spray first, and then we will then know where our points of connection are going to be, because then we'll add the wires. Now what we're going to do is going to start off with 12 24 gauge wires, all right? So this is 12 24 gauge wires. So 3, 6, 9, 12, okay? These can be white or green. I'm doing them white because it's a little bit easier for you to see what I'm doing here. Now we're going to do this very similar to the cherry, all right? But initially we only need to do this with one layer of floral tape, and then we'll go back to add to this. So I'm going to start at what will be the bottom. I'm just going to go around here like so. All right, and I'm just going to come up, so it's going to get my size guide here. So I'm going to come up here about, about 4 inches, okay, about 10 centimeters. Okay, so I'm just going to come up about, now this is the way you would make sort of a lot of branches if you're doing like a bonsai tree, oak leaves, things like that. But this is something I get asked quite a lot, you know, how do you make like a branch that looks sort of natural, okay? So what you do here is you're going to come up about 10 centimeters, all right, about 4 inches up here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to split this. So I'm going to now take three wires, all right. These are going to come out from the side here. like so. Just be careful of your eyes here. And then what you're going to do there is you're going to take this is going to come down here. Because what we're doing is we're making like the sub branches here. And these are actually, these you can trim down. These are going to be about 5 centimeters. So once you get that sort of started with your floral tape, you can then just trim that to about 5 centimeters, about 2 inches. But this is really just showing you how you do the branch end. So just going to trim this. Of course, these wires you just keep for when you need 22 gauge wires for flowers and things. And then we're just going to tape down about half of the length of that, okay? Then you're just going to split that. So you see how I've actually split that then into almost like 2, and you can just use your floral tape and you can just go around here like this. Now we'll come back to that. You can just wrap your floral tape around. Like you can almost just twiddle that around there like so. And then you can just come. So what you're doing is you're subdividing your pieces like this, all right? And you're just gonna. Okay, so what I've done, you see how I've done like a sub branch. So if you're making a tree, like if you were making, say, a tree on top of a cake, you could start off with like, say, 30 wires, and then with your 30 wires, you can do that as the trunk, and then you come off and you sort of branch off to make the little branches. And so you can make a tree in this way as well, okay? So then what I'm going to do is I'm now going to just continue. So very much like technique we use, but you only need to do this sort of single. And then I'm going to come down about 5 centimeters, about 2 inches. Okay, so about 5 centimeters, 2 inches. And then you see what I'm going to do now is I'm going to then split another 3 off. Okay, so you're just going to split another 3 wires off. All right, but you see how what this is doing is creating the branches. Now again, these are going to be cut. These will be cut to about, again, about 5 centimeters. I'm not doing them very long, but because, of course, if you were doing a cake where you wanted longer branches, you could totally change that. But see, if you do it like this, what happens is when you come off, each time you're coming off, it also means it's going to get a little skinnier at the top, all right? But also it looks natural with the way they're attached, okay? And then you're going to, again, you're just going to go around with your... here, it's going to come around here. And again, you're going to then just split that off like that. So you see how then that's going to give you the, but you don't, this part here, it doesn't have to be real perfect because we're going to come back and we're going to trim things and stuff as well, okay? All right, and then you will then trim the next one up, all right? Now, so what you would do is you just will continue, all right? So you can see here, you're just going to continue up. You just will continue up, and then each time you're sort of taping and splitting that. So what I've done there is I've made 4 sub branches coming off the side there, okay? So I've got 4 of those. And so once that's all taped, this is what it's going to look like, all right? So this is what the actual piece will look like this. Now, what I've done there is we're going to now add where your little little pieces that connected to the cake are going to go. All right, so we're going to bring our cake back in here. All right, I just need to have this towards me so I can just put the first part on. And what I've done there is on the end of this, because and you can do this later, but I did it now. I just cut this at an angle like I showed you in the previous segment of doing the cherry branch like this. All right, and I've just put some white paste on there, dusted it with cream, and then added a little bit of chocolate brown on there as well, okay? But we're going to take this is where it's going to be connected. So it's going to be connected into there. All right, I'm going to show you how we do this on the top one. All right, so what we do here is I'm going to show you the wire in a second on the top one, all right? But so you're just going to take like a little wire, which I'm going to show you. This is a 22 gauge wire I've just added. I'm going to show you this on the top part. And then I've got another one there. So what you need to do is just going to take these little pieces of wire, and then that's going to go into the hole. So that will go into the hole there, and then we're going to connect that with the next one. Going to just be a little careful, because remember, if you were working on a real cake, you have to just make sure that that's going to go into place. There we go. It's going to go into there like so. All right, and then we're just going to bring it up to the top. Okay, so I know where that's going to be. All right, so this is going to give me my branch. I've got 3 connections. Okay, and I'm just going to carefully take this out. Here and here. So you can mark that, you can put a piece of wire around it or whatever. So this is the point where I'm holding with my thumb and finger. So what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to tape that. So that will be the point that it's going to go into the cake, all right? So you see what you do here is you take the wire out, all right? So you're going to take your wire out like that. And then you're just going to take your floral tape. With your floral tape, you're just going to go round here. So I've got approximately about 2.5 centimeters, about 1 inch of wire there taped onto there to create the branch, okay? And then I'm just going to, so you see how I've got the two here, all right? So I've got one here, I've got one here, and I've got one here. And of course, when you put these on, you just bend them for the angle. And then I'm just going to cut that down, all right, to a little bit shorter here. This is about 10 millimeters, all right, about 3/4 of an inch. Because remember, this wants to stay within the little straw that we put in. And again, we're just going to tape this on. Just going to go around with your floral tape. All right, and that will be your connection. Okay, so we've got 3 of those. So these 3 like little spikes here, you can see they're all on the internal part, meaning on the inside part of the piece there. Okay, and if you need to just check to make sure that that's going to be okay, that works, that's fine. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to start on our spray. Now at the end of the spray, I'm going to start off with the just like one of each of the buds. Okay, so I have one of each of the buds. Now, in this arrangement, all right, so in this arrangement that I'm making here, I actually have 12 flowers, all right, so 12 flowers. I have 2 of the small buds. So I've got 2 of those. I have 7 of the medium buds. I have 7 of the large buds, and I have 5 of the extra large buds, okay? But of course, you could do any combination. So depending on the client's budget, or obviously, sort of how big the cake is would depend on how many you make. So what we're going to do here is going to do this. Now, when you're doing this on a longer scale, so if you needed it to be longer, all you would then do is like at this part here, you just would add another, say, 6 wires and then go up and split 3 and split 3. So you can make this as long as you want. I'm just basing this on a single wire because it's sort of as I said, that's just showing you on a small cake. But this would be perfect for a small wedding, for an anniversary, any of those sort of occasions. And so we're going to take this. So we're going to start off with the small, so on the end of the wire here. So what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to take my smallest bud, and I'm just going to have another bud there. So what I'm actually doing here is I'm just staggering these buds because I want them to have that nice sort of natural look. I'm going to just start off with my floral tape. Okay, and then we're just going to tape down. Now here I'm not making this, I'm going to be obviously thickened up, but the thing is you don't have to worry so much about like the details on here. But of course you could totally do it like I showed where I did the texturing and things. I'm just going to leave this tape just like as is, almost like a sort of more natural looking tape in here. And then so I'm just going to take one of each of the buds, which are going to be sort of staggered. This one is going to be a little bit more on top. Okay, and then you can just trim off a little bit of this. And of course, when you're doing this, you can just hold this up against your cake each time. So you see, this is going to sit onto the end of the branch here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to tape this on. Now, of course, it's quite long, so even if you're doing just a single wire length, it's quite long. And then you see here where that piece meets this piece. You're going to just sort of come back down, all right? And then what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to go around just a few times with my floral tape to almost just sort of thicken it up and then naturally come into the branch shape, okay? But you almost just sort of let your wire I'm just letting the wire like hang off the table here. Now be a little careful, you know, I mean, of course you potentially could have some little fatalities, all right? And we don't really need to worry too much about position of things at the moment, because the thing is the buds are going to be obviously used in groups, and then once we get it on the cake we can bend them so they have that nice natural look there. Okay, so then I'm going to take a single cherry here. I'm going to sort of put that so you see it's going to be over where that thick goes to thin. So I'm just going to have the single cherry, and again just going to have this in, not too tight, okay? So not too tight there, but it's going to come down here. And so you're going to have your single cherry there like so. So I'm just going to just tape that in. All right, so you're going to get your single cherry. And then I'm going to now move on to a double cherry, meaning two cherries, I should say. So they're going to sort of sit here. Now I'm not using any leaves on this cherry, just to show you the difference, because when the prunus first comes out, like actually just outside of our school here in Atlanta, we have a beautiful double flowering cherry, the prunus, like I'm showing you in this color. And our cherries bloom earlier in March, usually sort of early March, so usually about 7th, 8th of March. In Japan, it's about usually 7th to 9th of April is usually a lot of times peak, but they can be early, they can be late, depending on the weather. But you see how you create this effect here, all right? And so then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue down. So I'm just going to continue working down here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting in these other groups, all right? So you see how I'm just going to work these out. And so some of these are just buds and some of them are flower combinations, all right? About midway, I'm going to have the sort of large group. Here is actually 3 flowers, but you see how you've got all the beautiful blossoms there. So I'm going to just start continuing on that, and then I'll be back to show you the end part. So as you can see, I've sort of got about nearly really to the end of the spray. Now, of course, as I explained, the number of flowers you put in, this is going to give you quite a full branch, but you could go a little bit more, sort of not as many flowers. And you see what I've done is, like each of the bunches when they're added, you can see the green wires here. You're not going to trim those. You're literally just going to as you come down, because that's going to naturally make your base a little thicker. You see the stem will become a little thicker as it comes down, all right? So then I'm just going to put in my last little group in here. Now just be really careful. You have to sort of hold this up, all right? And because obviously you can imagine if you were doing this double the length, all right? But you could also put this like have a cushion or something. So if you needed to just put it down for a second, you can do. But you're just going to just tape that. You could also even use full width tape. I prefer the half width tape, but you see I'm just strapping this. A really, really stunning way to do the cherry, and I said the double flowering cherry. Now, of course, you could do double flowering cherry with leaves, all right, or you could also do the single flowering cherry in this style as well. I like the fullness of the double flowering cherry, especially for something like this, because I think it has a little bit more sort of impact into there. Okay, so you see how. So this will be our sort of finished branch of cherry. Now, as I said, that's 12 24 gauge wires. So it's quite stable because you've got see it holds its own shape, because if it's too floppy, the other thing is if you use strong wires, like say 18 or 20 gauge wire, it would be very stiff and difficult to get it to work onto the cake. And then you can also, like the little branches at the end, the little like sub branches, which I've done those, I've left them. Now you could attach like cherry buds to those as well, but I've left them more as like little brown branches, all right? Because I like that sort of look. But you can also just trim those with your wire cutters. And then what you would then do, just lay this down carefully. So where you have, all you need to do is just take like a little tiny piece of tape. This is just a small piece, all right? And you can just wrap that around like the end of that, just to disguise where you cut with the wire. So you see how I'm just going to just like twist that around the end here like so. And that's going to give you like a little finer end. So you just trim those down as needed, which you can do as you go and before you add the cherry. So here we have the branch of cherry, the double flowering prunus. So this is now ready to be attached to our cake. So now I'm going to connect it. So I'm going to take my pair of pliers and I'm just going to just push those in gently into the wire. Okay. So you see how you'll have your sort of beautiful branch of cherry. Now, the little cherry blossom individual petals that I showed, all right, so these I'm going to use, and you can just position those. I've already got some of these on here, but like where this goes into the cake, you could actually put like a little, as I said, a little tiny bit of the little cherry blossom on there, and you can just take that, just attach that with a little bit of piping gel. Okay, so just going to use a little bit of piping gel there. Not need to use a lot, but just going to put this on. I'm going to pop this in here like so, because that sort of has the effect, as I said, you know, because as I said, spending a lot of time in Japan, the Hanami party, which is in Japan, cherry blossom party, as I said in my first part of this video, you know, in Japan, usually the most junior person in an office goes to like Hibiya Park or one of the very famous parks with have cherry. And then they sort of camp out all day waiting for their co-workers to come after work, and they eat and drink. And as I said, it's beautiful, but it looks almost like pink snow coming down, you know, and a lot of you that are familiar with cherry, like when obviously it starts to gets windy, all of the blossoms come down. So this is just a really nice thing. And then like on your table, you know, literally you could just sort of sprinkle the cherry blossom petals on your table as well. But remember, these are also great to use on cake pops, or if you were doing, let's say for a wedding, a cake and also cookies or cake pops or cupcakes, you could use the little cherry blossom petals there. Also remember, the blossom cutter can be, or blossom mold can be used flat and make little cherry blossoms, full cherry blossoms for cupcakes and things like that. Now, all I would then do is just going to just sort of tweak this. So you're just going to just take a little bit of time and just obviously have that nice organic look of the blossoms. And of course, this could be put on a nice pedestal stand to elevate it. That's a really good tip when you're doing cakes that are fairly sort of small. If you elevate them on a pedestal stand, that really does a lot to give more impact to the cake. But you see the colors are really stunning and beautiful with this. So along with your, for example, your classic cherry or the single cherry blossom, you know, that could be used in the same sort of way. Now, if you were going to attach this to a cake like that, having now seen the technique of the small straw, you could also just, for example, add a 22 gauge wire or a 24 gauge wire here, tape that on, bend it at a right angle. So then you could just have one little straw, and then that could actually sit into the cake like that. All right, so it's a really, really, as I said, nice way to use the two cherries. So I hope you've enjoyed this two-part video on using my Flower Pro Blossoms mold and showing you how to make single and double flowering cherry. I hope you will enjoy making all of these flowers and using them in lots of different ways on cakes or in sprays with other flowers. Remember to check out my second video on the Flower Pro Blossoms, where I'll be showing how to make apple blossom, plum and peach, and talk about other varieties of blossoms. So see you next time. Sweet wishes. Bye.